And the new Liberal leader, Tony Abbott, joins me now in our Parliament House studio. Tony Abbott, now you looked as surprised as anyone when you emerged from the party room. Have you worked out now how you managed to move 35 votes into 42 and how Joe Hockey managed to blow it?
I think that's irrelevant now, Kerry.
Well, you won.
Well, as Pat Kennelly once said, in politics, in ballots, one vote is a landslide. And look, we're now moving forward. We're looking forward. We're looking forward to fighting Labor's great big new tax. That's what we're looking forward to.
When you say one vote's as good as a landslide, in this circumstance where the party seems to be split right down the middle and deeply on such a big issue, you have, in that sense, been given a very shaky mandate to lead a deeply divided party. By your own admission, you've earned a reputation as a party hard man and as Howard's head kicker, your words. So would you agree that you will need people skills that others don't discern to heal your party?
That is not a phrase that you will ever hear pass my lips again, I've got to say, Kerry.
That doesn't suggest you've got confidence in those abilities.
Well, look, people will make their own judgments, and I am confident that what looked like deep divisions were more a function of us being asked to go against our natural instincts to support a government. Now, the natural instincts of an opposition are to oppose a government, particularly a government that's proposing a $120 billion new tax.
But on this, the issue of who and what Tony Abbott is and the image that you have, he does laugh about it now, but I believe that this is the second time you've actually put Joe Hockey on the canvas. He says you once thumped him twice and gave him 2 black eyes on the football field. Is that right?
That's a slight exaggeration, but I also gave myself a broken knuckle as well. So Joe is a tough man. He's not to be taken lightly. I didn't take him lightly then. I don't take him lightly now. I want him on my front bench as Shadow Treasurer.
But that image of belligerence is one that you've earned over decades, along with nicknames like the Mad Monk. Now, where did that tag come from?
I think that was a Michelle Grattan joke, and it was a good joke. But I think we've moved past that now, Kerry.
OK, so when you appealed to the public today not to judge you by your past actions, what sins in particular would like us to forgive and forget?
Well, this is not a confessional and you can't give me absolution.
Well, you don't know that. Depends what the sins are in your eyes.
Look, I'm not going to detail them because I'm sure others will detail them for me. I'm sure the Labor Party is already getting its attack ads ready. So look, all I ask for is to be judged on what I do.
You've squared off against the government on climate change today, but until the very recent past, you supported Malcolm Turnbull's approach. You told me in an interview back in July, quote, "I don't think it's a good look for the opposition to be browner than John Howard going into the next election," but that's exactly where you're positioning the Liberal Party today, isn't it, going backwards on climate change?
Kerry, I was doing my best to support the then leader, and that's what frontbenchers have to do. But the Liberal Party is liberated, as of today, to follow our natural instinct, which is to oppose the government. Now, this isn't about climate change. It's about the mechanism for dealing with it. This isn't about climate change denial. It's about stopping a great big new tax.
But you're making it sound almost as if the opposition should oppose for the sake of opposing. You said in your recent book that the Rudd government's ETS legislation was almost a mirror image of the Howard government's ETS scheme, and you supported that scheme at the time. Now you want to delay it or reject it.
OK, but there was a fundamental difference, Kerry. The Howard government scheme was not meant to happen in advance of the rest of the world. And Malcolm Turnbull's position, until quite recently, had been that we weren't going to sign up to an ETS pre-Copenhagen. Now, I don't see why there is this insane rush to give ourselves this great big new tax before other people have done it, because it will harm our economy and it won't help the environment.
But the great big new tax that you refer to is a great big new tax that the Howard government, well, hang on, I'll come to it, with the Howard government, with you as a minister, signed up to first, and secondly, the great big new tax doesn't come until well after Copenhagen.
Yeah, but it was never a unilateral new tax under John Howard. Under Kevin Rudd, it is a unilateral new tax so that he has got a trophy to take to Copenhagen. Now, I'm all in favour, Kerry, of Prime Ministers of Australia looking good on the world stage, but I don't want to give Kevin a bauble just to boost his campaign to be the next UN Secretary-General.
But here's the thing. The other two alternative Liberal leaders, the last one and perhaps the next one, clearly both feel that you represent an extreme position in this debate, that the government will marginalise you. Joe Hockey speaks for a lot of his colleagues on climate change, does he not? When he says, quote, "I am not a sceptic, I'm a believer, I want action, the official science is clear, you say in comparison, I am hugely unconvinced by the so-called settled science," or another line, the climate change argument is crap. Now, that is a large divide.
Yeah. Look, we all want to do the right thing by the environment. This is not about climate change science. This is about the mechanism for appropriately dealing with it.
But isn't it also about the willingness of the whole of your party to embrace it rather than half your party to be genuinely believing and accepting the science and the other half to essentially be rejecting it?
Watch this space, Kerry. We will have a strong and effective climate change policy. It just won't involve a great big new tax.
So right now, and I guess you have to say that because you don't have one now. Right now, after years of debate on this issue, in government and out of government, you say you share the government's commitment to reduce carbon emissions, you just don't have a policy on how you'll do it, and you say, watch this space.
Well, our policy is not to have a great big new tax. Now, there are various other...
Sorry, does that mean that whatever does come, it's not going to be an ETS?
It's not going to be a unilateral ETS. It's not going to be a policy that puts our industries at a competitive disadvantage with their rivals. Now, let's give Malcolm Turnbull his due. Back in January, he gave a fine and very carefully considered speech on the 24th of January where he talked about all the other ways of significantly reducing carbon emissions without an ETS. Now, that is all now in the policy mix.
OK, well, when you talk about this great big new tax of Kevin Rudd's, this is what you said in an article in July in The Australian, that you described the government's emissions trading scheme as a plausible means to limit carbon emissions that doesn't impose any obvious costs on voters.
That's right. It's a stealth tax. That's exactly the point, Kerry.
But don't those voters get reimbursed for out-of-pocket expenses that come from higher electricity charges?
It's a giant money go-round. I mean, what
But
is
are they
the
out
point?
of pocket or not?
Well, some of them will be very much out of pocket, very much out of pocket. And
will they be the people at the high end who can afford to be out of pocket, and that the 90% that he talks about being reimbursed will not be out of pocket?
I'm not sure that anyone is that happy about being out of pocket. But let's look at the Rudd government's ETS. It looks at this point in time to be a great big tax, to provide a great big slush fund, to produce great big handouts administered by an enormous bureaucracy. It looks like a mechanism for a political slush fund,
but it's
more than it does as a mechanism to help the environment.
It is a mechanism that's being widely accepted around the world as the best of several options to try to come up with a systematic process, global process, that will reduce effectively carbon emissions. This is not just Kevin Rudd. It was John Howard before him and its governments all around the world.
OK, can I also say this, Kerry? You know what I think happened today? We went from being a former government to being a fair income opposition. The job of oppositions is not to have the last word in every policy. The job of oppositions is to subject the government's policy to scrutiny.
OK, one voting demographic where the Liberal Party suffers badly is women, particularly younger women. Mm-hmm. Coming back to that hard-line image of yours, for a lot of women, you're not exactly a pin-up boy, are you, as a political leader?
That may be the case, notwithstanding the photos of last weekend.
We're not going to see any more of those. Those
Speedos are compulsory if you're in the club swim at Queenscliff.
But take the point seriously. You are going to have to pick up on the women's vote, quite apart from anything else, substantially.